and I had to do something else, and I had to tell people in the audience, ignore that step. It's just because of a weird side effect to my configuration. So,
do you have IPv6 connectivity on this box?
Yes, I have an IPv6 VPN.
Oh, nice.
Yep, that's a talk for another day. That I haven't. I mean, it was quite difficult to set up, so this is something worthy of a talk. But I couldn't tell you how to do it right now.
So that IPv6 looking number at the top of your screen must be IPv6?
Yep, and that's my laptop always has that IPv6 number, so you can port scan my thing from anywhere in the world.
Can I make a suggestion?
What?
Would you increase the text size?
Of the terminal, the bottom thing you shouldn't even really pay attention to, or the top thing. I mean, that's all you should really see.
That's all we should really see.
Yeah, is that big enough? Do you want it bigger?
Make it a little bigger.
Okay, bigger.
Yeah, a little bigger.
All
Yeah,
right.
that should do it.
How big is this terminal now? That's smaller than a standard terminal, but I guess I can do that. Can I go one size down, anything?
Well, we can try
One size down. Well, wait a minute now. Wait a minute now.
That's 72.
Let me look and see. Yeah, maybe.
85, I really need it to be that size because otherwise it's smaller than a standard terminal.
Well, then how about we try moving the projector back so the image projected?
Oh.
Because this was, did you see how long it took them to get it set up like this?
Mm.
I mean, I can increase the font size at particular points because I can do it on the fly. That's actually as large as it will go, so that's an easy size to find.
That's plenty.
Okay. I changed fonts today to do something, but it's not important. Okay, so the first thing is nothing to do with tunnels or anything fancy. It's merely the fact that SSH has a config file.
SSH has a config file?
SSH has a config file.
Why didn't no one tell me this?
I don't know.
Did you read the man?
Several times? I must have lost that part.
See, I need a little bit more screen real estate.
I want to see your IPv6 address again.
Why?
You can see a picture of it. It's going to be on video.
All right.
Okay, good.
Actually,
I just want to end after right now.
go ahead. There's probably nothing that's running. All right, so, oh wow, here's something. Are we recording now? I should probably remove this because I no longer need the forward agent to it. But first thing you need to know is anything at the top of the SSH file that's in the form of a word, a special word, is an option that you can also specify on the command line. So right here I have hash known host no, and I don't need to explain what that does, but if I wanted to set that without a config file, it's ssh-o hash known hosts. And it's actually not case sensitive, so, whoops. That doesn't work. This works. You could actually do something like that. It's the same thing. It needs to be no. So the other bit, so the second type of line is the line that has the word host on it. This line matches the host name that you're SSHing to. It's the form of the list. It also takes blobby patterns. So if I wanted to say that everything at .securesites.net I forward an SSH agent to, I would say yes. What forward SSH agents to will be the third topic of this talk, so ignore that for right now. The most useful thing that you can do right off of the bat is you have a server whose name you don't control the name of for whatever reason. It's not here. So I should have manufactured a case, but I'll do this with one of my servers. The SLUG server is named Stjofen, which is a Norwegian word which some people have trouble pronouncing. Stjofen, I don't necessarily want to type out stjofen.hardison.net. And while my shell will happily complete that, it'll happily complete that, it's really nice to just be able to type that. So what you see here is I say that host stjofen.hardison.net, Stjofen, and SLUG all have the following attributes applied. And the attribute that I apply here is very important. It's host name, which means whatever host name I've actually requested, use this one instead, which is really convenient. The place where this is really, really convenient is for, I don't have one for GitHub? Awesome, I have an example now. So if I want to clone something from GitHub, the standard way of doing that, I have to look at the remotes. Hold on. I never remember, for one thing, GitHub's host name. I guess it's just github.com, but it's Yeah, it's just github.com. But it's also, you have to be the Git user, and that's an awful lot of types of what I have selected. So if I wanted to just make it so that I could just check out my home directory repo with a single word, I could do host. The order really doesn't matter. If I wanted to, the same rules to apply to both, I should type out the full name, but for this example, I could just say GitHub, which is a host name that doesn't resolve to anything. And I can say hostname github.com. That at part, actually I should remove the at too. The username can be specified with user. So now when I say SSH to GitHub, it's going to specify both the host name and the user Git. So how this will end up working is where I would normally say this whole line here. I could do, and you don't need to know anything about Git. Instead of saying all of that, I can just say GitHub. And because everything uses SSH, and every instance of SSH reads that config file, that takes a little bit, it just works. So what this feature is not really, this is not like, you would expect a more high-level feature like this to be called alias, but instead you just get to implement hostname aliases by exploiting the hostname option that you can specify. Curiously, this is a valid option, so if you were to put this at the top of your SSH file, I think that it throws an error. At least I think it throws an error now. But otherwise, if you typed in some hostname that I don't have a rule for, it's going to fail because, actually, let's see what it's doing.
Did that say it was trying to connect to GitHub?
Yep, trying to have an SSH shell to GitHub. So if you wanted to also prank someone, you could just add this to their SSH file, and it would take them a very long time to figure it out.
Add what?
What? Oh, add hostname something to the top of someone's SSH config, and every time they SSH to something, it will use that hostname instead of whatever they specified on the command line.
Unless they have their configuration file synced.
Yep. Okay, so that is a feature.
Could you
So
put that in their etsy as well to
yes.
for everybody on the box?
Yep, you could do that. Oh my, that's actually quite a good idea, or a bad idea. So we'll go over. I need to get my window thing back. I'm going to keep some notes so that the people that watch this later have some show notes to do this. So feature number 1 is SSH hostname aliases, which that was pretty cool. Another thing that I use in my SSH file is I have a shell that does really advanced tab completion, and it tab completes to all the host names that it knows about, and it gets these from a variety of sources. The default security setting on SSH says to hash the known host file. What this is a file, this format, and if I don't have any entries in here that hash, but instead of actually being able to see all the host names I've connected to, you would just see hashes. So SSH knows if you're connecting to something, if it's connected to it before, and if the public key of the server's changed.
When did SSH start doing that?
It started doing that in like 2.2 or something. I disable it because I don't like it. So my file has hash known host keys disabled, which means that if you look in this file, you get to see all the host names I connect to, which means that even if I've connected to a box once, that it's in my tab completion history. So that's kind of useful. Actually, I probably have some. Oh, I don't have that one. Or it's weird. Oh, yeah, that's right. So the other thing, and a recent, this requires a recent version of SSH as well. I'm not sure of the exact version, but I'll put that in the show notes when I know. I have more than one known host file. So I have this one here that's the first one, which is the one that SSH writes known host to. So when I SSH to a server that I've never been to before, and it prompts you, has anyone seen that? I can probably simulate that.
Akio.me.
What?
Akio.me.
Kimu.me?
Akio.me.
Akio.me? Yeah, so I've never SSH'd this before. So you get this prompt, and it's like, do you want to trust this fingerprint? And I could go yes, and it's going to write it. But it's going to write it to, sorry, to this cache directory that I set up. So now if I actually decide I trust this and I want to connect to it all the time, I can copy it to my known host file. And the benefit for me in doing this is I version control this file, so on every machine that I use, I'll always have a list of host names that I've connected to. So that's
Now-
good.
Now, will it silently accept hosts from either file?
Yes,
Okay.
that's why. But
So you have to get rid of the cache file really in the stream method.
yeah, so yeah, if I wanted to just get rid of everything I've connected to recently, I just delete this one. But the boxes I really trust is preserved. This .cache directory is literally like cache, and I'm not going to do that right now because I haven't migrated all the hosts out of there that I want to. But as you, oops, no, yeah. Luckily I have it configured. That's about 79 hosts that I've connected to that I might want to keep.
Now, is this a feature that you kind of kludged on, or is this actually a feature?
This is a feature of SSH, and this is a thing you have to watch out for. If you copy this config file or this particular line to even a slightly older version of SSH, like the one available in 2 versions of Fedora ago, whatever that is, I don't remember the number, but I know it was 2 versions ago or so, then SSH will just die because it will only be expecting 1 file name here, not 2. But recent versions have allowed both. You can actually find that out in hold on. All of these options are available in the SSH config man page. Global host file, hash known host, user host file. So this one has a default of 2 options, which is known host and known host 2. It doesn't mention when that was changed, but okay, so you can have to take my word for it. If you have an older version of SSH, this will break, and SSH won't work at all until you remove the offending line from the config file. So that's one bad thing.
So it only allows up to 2?
Yeah.
Or just 2?
Oh, it allows any number. Now it allows any number. You still allow 1. So hash this feature. We'll call this feature number 2, which I'm actually going to. Sorry.
So you could have 1 file for your local usage and then 1 sync across many.
Yep. Like one for especially if you have a computer that's inside a LAN and it has access to a bunch more hosts in the LAN, like the data center, than the other one. So I call this one SSH managed known hosts.
And when it asks you if you want to add the host key to the file?
It adds it to the first one that you list. The first one that you list that it can write to.
Okay.
So if it can't write to the first one, it will write to the second one?
Yep. So if the .cache directory does not exist, it'll just write to the other one. Because
So it won't create it?
No, it won't create
You
it.
could make a centrally managed one that you just make read-only to...
Yeah, you could use this. You could also use this feature to pre-populate a list of known hosts so that people never do that. You could also turn on an option that makes it not prompt you and just reject it if it doesn't know the host.
Oh, that's convenient.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't use that option. It's not useful to me, but that is something that's possible. But more along the things I'm actually familiar with. We've kind of gone through 2 lines here, so I'll just continue down. Compression just specifies that the connection uses compression, which is useful. Here's where it starts. Here's where some stuff that ends up being confusing in talks I've given. I have this control path set to the temp directory. It ends up creating a socket file for each host I connect to. And what this socket file does, there's a couple of things, but I'm going to make sure it's closed right now. So I'm going to, no, it's not open. So so the first time that I SSH to Lofen, we'll go back over to window 4. So I'm in the Lofen now. Lofen is my other server that's more personal than Jofen, which is what hosts SLUG. If you look in my temp directory, there's a Dylan Lofen Hardison.port.sh. So that is, as you can probably guess by the highlight that it's got, is a socket. Now that means that every additional time that I connect to Lofen, it's going to use the same connection. Notice that that takes a lot less time. Even if I was logging in with passwords, which you shouldn't do, but if I was logging in with passwords, I would only have to enter the password the first time because every additional thing is going over the same single SSH connection.
So it's opening up new channels each time?
Yep, it's using SSH2 supports multiple concurrent streams over one connection, and that's using all of them. Now the side effect you can actually detect when this has happened is when I log out, it'll say shared connection to whatever closed. Sorry? Whoops, all lowercase, Andy, sorry. So
that killed the master connection?
no, it just closed that. So that's actually a separate setting. If you closed all the default, let me show you. If I close this one, it also shows shared host connection dropped. So on a particular host by host basis, I set control persist, which means that it leaves the tunnel open forever. Well, probably forever. So for a long time I did this and I was pretty happy. And I didn't bother looking at any other options. But now, you see the obvious problem. I've connected to Lofen, and if I connect to it again, it's not going to open a new connection. It's going to use the same one. So if my internet connection were to die before the TCP timeout could detect that the connection was bad, this would basically be stuck. I try opening a new connection, and it would just sit there and wait.
Is there a way to hard close a persistent?
Then the way I used to do this is I PSX, look for SSH, find the one that's my process, and oh, by the way, if I type this is bad because I run SSH agent. We'll get to that as feature number 4. If I did that, it would kill my SSH agent, which means I'd have to start entering my passphrase every time I want to connect to something using public key. We'll get to agent.
So here's a question.
Mhm.
So you have a socket file under 10. I'm assuming it's only readable and writable by your user, correct?
That's correct.
Now, could root mess with you?
Yes. You have to, yes. Root, but then again, if you're root, you can attach, if you have an SSH process running, you could attach with GDB to that SSH process and call functions in the executable to establish your own tunnel anyway.
Yeah, but this is a really stinking easy comparison.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you should trust that you have to trust root on the box. I would not do this on a box that you don't trust.
Gotcha.
I wouldn't SSH to another box. I mean, for one thing, your the private part of your key is accessible to root too. So we get into that and when it gets to feature number 4.
Can you pull that part of your config file back up?
Oh yeah. Which one?
The feature you were just explaining.
Oh yeah.
I think that sets it.
Sorry. Wait, what window do I have it open? Oh, I have it open over here. Control persist, yes. So I only set control persist for specific hosts because otherwise I'd get a lot of persistent connections. Now, instead of killing the SSH process, what I was getting at for using this, which is feature number 3, which is tunnels. So there's this file that exists, and I can detect if it exists. And that's all fine and good, but how can I kill it? It turns out there's this option called uppercase O, which allows you to issue a control command to the active connection. It's kind of limited what you can do. You can basically forward new ports, which is useful. We'll get to port forwarding as topic number 6. But what I want to do here is use exit, which I've done this in the talk. So when I want to start a new SSH connection from scratch to the same host and I've got a control socket, I do this and it closes the control socket. Now, what you probably want to know is what happens if you're using that at the time. Like I'm logged in there and I want to exit it. So if I do that, it closes it. It forces your log out. So that's not where.
Is that a graceful exit? Like it will execute the exit command, or just?
It sends E off to the shell, so the shell probably exits safely. I mean, it's literally an E off. The far side of the connection goes away, so and the file. So. What was it called? Control persist. So now feature 4, which I had previously mentioned. I may have renumbered these at some point. But I would probably be wise to remember which window I have open. So as you can see, for even when you're doing hostname aliases, I actually use the user one a bit. My router at home has the admin user, which is ridiculously common router name for root, so I specify that. I'm just mentioning that because you see me scrolling by it all the time. Was I going to talk about agents? Yeah, we'll talk about agents because that's kind of important.
Well, Dylan, what's an agent?
So first you need to know about SSH PKI. I'm going to ignore the fact, because I don't think it's useful, that SSH can do password logins. So if you're using SSH like a secure telnet, that's cool and everything, or secure RSH. Hopefully you're not using RSH. If you're using RSH, they should be shot. But so when you log into some boxes, I can actually log into this one. Nah, I'm not going to do it. So I could show you that I could log in this one and enter a password and log in, but that's not what I've been doing. You've been seeing, I log in all these boxes. And it's not asking me for a password, right? So I mean, if William was in here right now and he grabbed my laptop, he could like SSH into all of my machines without accessing them. So that's because there's this process running called SSH agent, which is running, SSH agent. There's also a GPG agent. So SSH agent is started at some point when my desktop system starts running, and it prompts me for a passphrase, and the passphrase that it prompts me for is the one that unlocks one of those files, probably ID RSA, because who wants to use ECSA? Especially not if you're using certain prime numbers published by a 4-letter government agency. They got them from a 3-letter government agency. So, I'm going to do something I shouldn't do, which is going to make the rest of this talk slightly annoying. But no, actually I won't do that. I'm going to open a new shell, subshell, and unset some variables. So if I unset my SSH off sock, don't need to know what that is. And now I tried SSH in Lofen. It's going to prompt me, because I don't have an existing connection open, probably. Thank you, Verizon. We have a small interlude here because, that's strange.
It hasn't given up the ghost yet.
Anyway, so even though it says I'm connected, we just tell it to disconnect. Dylan, why aren't you using the library Wi-Fi? Well, back in the day, the library Wi-Fi didn't work. And it still makes me jump through hoops. And I think they're filtering ports. And we'll also stop the charade of me having